Hi there, Martin Bailey here. Today I'm going to take you on a safari in 3 drops of water. And this has really been a fascinating project for me. What I did was, a few weeks ago, I bought a book on freshwater plankton. And this is written by, let's see at the back here, Takeshi Nakayama and Haruyo Yamaguchi. These are 2 professors at the Tsukuba University here in Japan, and they wrote this book. It's all about plankton, and I have spent the last few weeks with my head in this book, just sort of learning about the various species. But I've also used it to label many of the species that we'll look at in today's video. I'm going to do a couple of versions, just one to show you a few of the really cute things that we saw. But this long one is more like the feature length. It's probably going to be 45 minutes by the time it's finished. But I wanted to tell you a few things about it before we get in. And that the first thing is, if you look at the screen here, the screen's behind me, you'll see one has a light background and the other has a dark background. And this is basically like traditional microscope work, with light coming up from under here, from the light source, up through we have an aperture there, or diaphragm, and then through the slide into the whole optic system, and that's called light field photography. But let's just show you these. I have bought a little kit of these discs, varying sizes for. That you need different sizes for the different optics, but these basically allow me to do what's called dark field microscopy, and that is, if I take this little filter holder out here and drop this in and then put the filter holder back in place, you'll see that on the back here we now have a dark background with a beautifully lit subject. And what's happening is the little ring in the middle of that filter is blocking out the direct light, but you adjust the diaphragm and the height of the light to basically have light spill onto the subject rather than coming directly through it. So even relatively translucent subjects will often get become a little bit more visible, and as you'll see, you can see the insides of some of the rotifers that we will be looking at as well, and I'll explain what they are as we go through this. And the other thing is that if you see here, that screen at the back gets brighter and you can see more light coming through here. I basically I embedded a circular LED ring light in the bottom of my microscope, and that enables me, with the help of a controller here, to add more light than I normally would get with this microscope. So let's jump in and take a look at this universe in 3 drops of water. Okay, so I have put this video together, done most of the editing, and I'm going to walk you through it. And this is basically what we're looking at here is Tamagawa, the river that runs 5 minutes or so from our apartment here in Tokyo. So as you can see, I walked along, went down by the river, and went to try and find some spots where I could get some water, but also some plant life. And that's what I was doing here. And I found another spot where I could get some reeds and the algae that was growing on the reeds. And this was really the jar that gave the most organisms, but they were all pretty much teeming with life, as we'll see. Put it into a bread bag and off we go. So back in the studio, I prepared a slide and a cover slip, and I've got some small instruments that, I've got a Spoit or a a pipette there, and I used tweezers here to pull out the the reed that I brought back. And looking at this now, I probably wouldn't have used my bare hands to do this, and I didn't I did this for 4 days, pulling things out and putting it onto slides. But just as you see, tapping the plant life onto the top of the slide is already leaving you can see little green specks on there. That is what we'll see in a moment through the microscope. But I've also just sort of cut off a few of these filaments and took out the big parts. If you leave the big clumps in, they stop the cover slip from getting close enough to the base slide. And when that happens, you find it more difficult. Well, you can't even focus on some things because your objective lens has to be so close to even get things inside the focus plane that you really can't have much of a gap there. So, and you'll see, I mean, even with like a millimeter, here we go, we'll put the cover slip on. You see how the water gets sucked up onto the edge as I drop it in there. And there's a little bit of a gap, so I use the capillary action to have it suck a little bit more water up, put the remainders back in there, and now we can take this and have a look on the microscope. So set it up there on the stage, and in we go. So this first thing that we see here it's called a sac amoeba. It's a type of amoeba, I think, and this is a nematode. These are now helping to find cancer. They can detect cancer, and they're very common as well, but just wiggling around attached to something. This here it's called a chlorella or a colurella. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but this is a type of rotifer, which is they call them it's a wheeled animal, and the reason for the wheel is I believe the shape of them being round, not so much the fact that they have wheels, which they don't. But you can see how cute this little guy is here. And at the moment, note that we're still using light field, so we can see through these animals more, and the background is still light. And you can see I believe that's the heart beating inside there. But as we'll see, I got a lot of footage on this, maybe a little bit too much. But as we'll see, these guys just get along with their daily life. I've just scraped him out of a jam jar of water, put him onto a slide, sort of tap the reeds and stuff on the slide, and they just pick right back up and get back in. He's eating. We'll see a few of them take a poop as well a number of times, but they just amaze me in how they just get on with their lives like this. Here we have 100 micrometers, and that's basically telling us this is the smallest, the colurella, I believe. And we have a number of, two other of these very cute looking rotifers, as well as some regular ones, which we'll look at in a moment. You can see him sucking the water in there as well, look, probably just filtering stuff out of the water. And that thing that you can see sticking out the back looking like a tail, apparently that's a foot, or the toe of a foot. This is, I think, called a Hartmanella, and I was just intrigued by this, how it sort of changes shape. It moves around, puts a limb out one side, and then off it goes in that direction, and then just pulls something out here again to the right, and just grows and changes shape as it moves along. And here we're going to transition from light field to dark field. And I prefer the dark field technique so much more. It gives a more artistic look to the images and really helps you to see more. And this is just, I was playing around with this. It's just an air bubble between the slide and the cover slip. And it just looked to me like a planet. And as I moved the filter underneath between the light source and the slide, I just found it so fascinating how it all changes like that. And this is a larger air bubble that is it's going to take up this smaller bubble in a moment. There it goes. And I don't know, I'm just sort of playing, getting to grips with this. And there's also a whole bunch of different types of plant life that I found in there. I've tried to find the names in the book that I just showed in the introduction, and it's just, to me, fascinating. It almost looks like we're sailing through the Trifid Nebula or something. And that's another reason why I feel this looks like a universe. And you can also see all of the tiny life forms that are swimming around in here. And this green is just so beautiful. Even this little sort of two-lobed thing has a name. For those of you that might get disturbed by this, watch out, because there's a bit of a nasty coming up here. You can see it moving in the top right corner now. This was quite a shock when I found it. But I'm looking at all these tiny creatures, and then all of a sudden we've got this giant transparent anaconda with legs. You see its feet. It's got like little four-fingered feet at the front, a few rows of them that it seems to be using to move itself around. They don't seem so aggressive. I didn't see these. I noticed a few of these over the 4 days I was looking at this water, and I never saw one of them eat anything, although we do get a good view of their intestines. There you can see the toes. Look, four toes, or maybe just bones in fins, but they're very strange, and I can't identify this. I've not been able to find a name for this thing. So at the moment, I'm just calling it the giant transparent anaconda. It's probably, in real life, it's probably about, 2 to 3 millimeters long. Not visible with the human eye, probably because it's almost transparent as well. We can only really see it here because we're lighting it with the dark field technique. If this was light field, I may not even notice this guy swim past. And there we see his intestines. Fascinating stuff. Looks like he's got a cheetah's paw at the end on the tail there as well. Good look at the fins there too. Fins or feet, toes, whatever. Crazy stuff. Okay, so this is a lapidella, and the Japanese word for this is an usagi wa mushi. An usagi is a rabbit, and you see the two toes there. I'm not sure if someone was thinking that makes them look like a rabbit, quite probably, but there's another one that comes up a little bit smaller than this that we'll see a lot of, and it's the mouse version. And they're all rotifers. They're all in the Rotifera family, I believe it's called. But these things are just so cute. And we're at 400 times, 40 times objective here. And I believe what we're seeing on the inside is the algae that it's eaten. They just run along things. They'll see it go along that stalk there. It's just eating the algae off of stuff. They zip along these little rods as well. And you can see also on the right here, the line that's moving towards the rabbit rotifer is, basically the slide is gradually drying up. I'd been looking at it and filming this slide for about 2 hours by the time I got to this point, and it's gradually drying up. So the air from the side was working its way in a solid wall. And I found that air, the surface tension of air inside these slides is solid. It's, you know, the beings cannot push through it or punch through it. So I actually, shortly after that last clip, I went and got another pipette full of water and just replenished it from the edge. We can also see something moving from side to side there, and I would imagine that's the heart or something similar to that. And it's probably helping with digestion as well if it's moving that sack of algae. Here he goes, look, it's just come back to the same strip and realised it's got no algae left on it. He's already eaten it. You can see on the microscope I've got an x-axis and a y-axis screw to move the stage either left or right, or, well, from left to right or up and down. I've got a third knob which is to focus with, so I'm constantly having to twiddle the knobs to get the animal both in the frame and to keep it in focus. You see the amount of movement in the water that's being stirred around there as well. And this is, I can't find the true English name. It's a Daphnia, but it's got a shell. So it's basically a water flea that has a shell on it. And I noticed that I found the Japanese name, which I included there in the book, but I couldn't find the shelled Daphnia. So that's sort of a made up word by myself. I'm sure it has a real name, but I couldn't find it. And you can just see him, the feet sticking out the front there, and out of the back we've got some sort of tendrils sticking out there. It's just a water flea inside a shell. Pretty crazy stuff. And this is at 400 times or 40 times objective. His legs moving around there as well. Here we now see a rotifer that's just moving away, but I think this guy's covered in algae and stuff. And if you look at the bottom where his feet are, it looks like there's something, a parasite, probably a nematode that is turned parasitic on it and is attacking it in some way. He doesn't look in a very healthy state. There, you can see the nematode, I believe it probably is. Another quick view of the shelled Daphnia. You see him grabbing onto stuff and pulling it in. Just, again, eating. It's like the main job. Eat, stay alive. This, again, as I try to get this in focus, this is it's the same rotifer family. I don't know if these have got they probably do have a specific name. You can see it's much longer than the rabbit one that we were looking at earlier. And these guys are apparently very common. There was a story recently about some of these long rotifers being thawed out from 24,000 year old glacial ice in Siberia, and they came back to life. So apparently they do pretty well with radiation as well. So very hardy creatures. And here's one. You can see how this particular species tends to move around inches along like an inchworm, but they can also swim. While I was just watching without the video rolling, one of this type of rotifer swam pretty freely across through the water as well, so they don't always just inch along like this. And this guy, I made a few guesses at what it probably was, but I'm not going to try to put a note of its name. It's the whirly blob, and it just to me seems so cute. Every time it stops, you can see what look like two eyes. Probably are light receptors, but I don't know. It's just so cute. Not quite sure what's going on there. It looks like it's caught up on something and it's whizzing around that, but then later it just frees itself and goes off and starts to swim around. So here we go. It's just free of that particular location now, not stuck to it, in fact. It moved pretty quickly as well. And this is probably my favorite. This is the mouse rotifer, and I mean, look at this. It's got a long tail. It's unlike the rabbit one, which has the two toes. This one has one toe, but again, it just looks like a tail. They look like mice just scourging around, and there's a few here as well. They live in colonies apparently, and they just, to me, look like mice. You'll see in a moment from some angles, it almost looks like they have little mice ears, and so it's just incredibly, and they're fast. Look, off he goes. There's another one. And we measure it with the micrometer. It's about 100 micrometers across. So that's what, it's 0.1 millimeters. This is probably the 20 times objective. Well, yes, it is. It's the 20 times objective. So we're looking at maybe a millimeter of the world across the width of the frame here. Another one scourging around in them. Here, look at that. It looks like he's got ears there. There's a better view. Either I've missed it or a little bit later as well. These things are just so cute. Again, trying to focus, keep them in focus as they move up and down inside the water. They go out of focus very, very quickly. We've got two in the frame here, look. Two mice scurrying around, getting their food. Scurrying around, foraging. I'm getting two words mixed up, I think. And I mean, I'm looking at these as though they are little transparent mice, but I think this is it. Look at those two ears. I'm looking at these as though they're mice. It's plankton, you know. It's pretty much all just plankton, and I find it so fascinating. Another shot of the ears there for a moment. You also see from the side here what I believe are their eyes, the light receptors as well. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I've literally just bought my book and having a look, so if I make mistakes, put me right. If you know that it's a mistake, of course. If you don't, I'm just correct. It really did just amaze me how all of the life, the organisms that are in these few drops of water are so resilient. They a few moments ago they were stuck in the bottom of a jam jar. Before that, they were where they should have been, which is the river. And here we go back to a rabbit rotifer here. And they, you move them, they just pick straight up where they left off, eating, crapping, being eaten. You can actually buy, I believe, rotifers as fish food or something. Apparently, they're not harmful to humans either. So, I don't know. Wouldn't necessarily like to feast on one, but there are things that get into our food, regardless of what we try to do to it. So, apparently, the nematodes that we looked at earlier, that squiggly worm, they can live in all sorts of foodstuffs and sometimes do, even in vinegar, which is not a wonderful thought. But there's stuff like this all over the place. It's just whether you see it or not, and that's what's so disturbing to some people. My wife will not look at any of these images. And there's another rotifer, the bigger one. It's got a name. Let me see if I can. I don't know how you pronounce this. Bdelloid rotifers is one species that I'm looking at on Wikipedia, and this is a rabbit one. But look how far he's got his foot out with the toes on the end. I'm not sure if it's a different species or he's just decided he's going to really stick that foot out. But it's much further than before. And here again, a quick warning that a different one, but the anaconda's back. So if you can't look at this, avert your eyes now. This one lasts about a minute, and I'll tell you when it's off screen. Shorter than the other one. Doubles back on himself here and then sort of comes out in the open. There he goes. Slightly different to the other one. He doesn't have the same type of feet. He's got little tentacles sticking out to the side, but he doesn't have those same feet. So I'm not sure what either of these are. I just cannot identify them. More rabbit rotifers. I think that's all we see of the anaconda for a while. So if you want to look back, the rabbit rotifers are on screen again. And here back in, this is the few hours or so that I spent on the last day. I actually really wanted to get some very close, so 40 times objective, both video and some photos of these before I took the jar and put it back in the river, or the jars and put it all back in the river. I just about succeeded, but I really need a better camera adapter. The video is just about watchable, but the the photographs, really, I would like to see a little bit better image quality. I also saw at the top there another thing eating away, and it's I've got a bit more footage of that in a moment. I'm not sure again what it is. These are the rabbit rotifers. This is probably one of the best bits of footage of the rabbit, with the outline and everything, once he's back in focus here. And see how he's playing with that air bubble. Can't get in it, can't really do anything to it. Also, look over on the right side. I was a little bit, actually, very disappointed in myself for not being able to see this. But you see those things floating around on the right side? They're on little coils, and I wanted to try and find these. You'll see in a moment, they're out of focus, but as I get a little bit of almost in focus footage at the end, but they're on long stems at the moment. You see how they just disappeared? They're coming out now on the right side, and I've got the name will come up in a moment. But they're on these little springs or coils, and they attach themselves to things, and then they gradually come out and feed, and then something happens, they zip themselves back in. And I really wanted to get a bit of footage and hopefully some photos of those. But if, you know, while I was looking at this, I wasn't looking at a full screen. I was looking at the everything through the microscope. So I'm looking at a tiny little area compared to what we see on the computer screen. But there they are again at the top. Look, they're out on the end of their stretched out coils. Get one piece of slightly better footage before we finish. Look at them all. They're all out now. Look. Vorticella or Vorticella. They're incredible. I was really kicking myself that I didn't get better footage of that. I noticed something moving, but there's something moving pretty much all the time. Just sticking in the edge of the frame on the left there now as well. So pretty. There they are. Almost in focus. So this is the thing. I don't know what this is. It looks like a mosquito nymph, or you know, the first form of the mosquito after the egg. But I don't think it is. They probably need, you often see photos of them up on the surface taking in air, but it looks like one of those. There we go, slightly better view of this. We're almost finished. It's fast moving. He's switched himself around very quickly there. And we measure this. I think it's, in a moment you'll see, it's about probably 300 to 400 micrometers across, or microns. 350 to 400. So a little bit more footage of the rabbit rotifers. Strips of rod there again. It's been such an amazing 4 days. I have totally enjoyed it. And I'll probably do it again. Maybe not such a long video, try and sort of condense things down a little bit more. But to me, this was, to a degree, life-changing, just seeing everything that is in these few drops of water and how it's so resilient and just gets on with life. You completely change its environment. What's it do? It goes off and eats and craps and gets eaten and all sorts of stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this safari in the universe in 3 drops of water. Thanks for watching. And you can catch up with me as usual on martinbaileyphotography.com. Also, consider supporting us on Patreon.